Hello and welcome to the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Alex, joined as always by my co-host Mike, and Goose just released their sixth studio album, Big Modern, a few days ago, and we are here to run through our first impressions of the album. But before we get into our main topic, Mike, you want to take care of the quick housekeeping?
Yeah, of course. As always, best way to keep up with us is at Slow Ready Pod. We're on pretty much every platform you can think of, growing slowly on YouTube. So if you want to give us a follow there, definitely appreciate that. And if you feel so inclined, definitely would love any kind of reviews or sharing it with friends. And you can always email us at slowreadypod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We've got a lot of great topics planned, but love to hear from all of our listeners. And if you got any ideas or shout outs you'd like to give, just send them our way. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And, we're still trying to grow YouTube. Obviously, we didn't do like 45 episodes on there. So I'm just going to throw it out there. If you send us like a screenshot that you're following us on YouTube or you just subscribed, I'll send you some stickers. Just shout us out.
There we go.
But
Love it.
normally we get into the hot tea here, but the hot tea is the album itself. And there's no real other news and notes besides the tour kicking off. So let's get into our flow down and talk our first impressions of Big Modern. So
Yeah.
we'll get more into the big picture stuff on Big Modern here after we go track by track, I think. But I wanted to see if you had any kind of general overarching thoughts on this album and what you thought of it, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Yeah, I'll leave some of my broader thoughts for the very end when we just kind of take a very big picture look at things. But I will say, at least just initial impression, we kind of knew that this album was going to have a lot of 80s sensibilities to it, and it definitely did. No surprise there. I guess my biggest surprise was how much I enjoyed it. I have kind of put this out there a few times as we've talked about Torero and Good to Be, but I'm not the biggest fan of music from the 80s. And so I was a little bit dreading that this album was not going to be targeted towards me, but it's Goose, and I should know this by now, but they really don't do anything in the way of disappointment. And so pleasantly surprised with how much I'm digging this thing after, 4 listens now.
Got me tearing up, man. I'm so glad to hear that because, like, I was worried about that. And, we really wanted to get this out to y'all as quickly as we could. So we're just going through our first impressions here. So I wasn't sure if you'd have enough time for it to warm up for you. But this seems like their most cohesive work overall in terms of like a theme they were going for and it all flowing together. I don't know if it necessarily makes it their best work, but I really, really love this album. And I'm officially Studio Alex now, as we've joked about. Like, I love Studio Goose for some reason out of nowhere.
This moment has been a long time coming, people. If you've been paying attention for the long run, then you kind of could see this coming. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's their most mature album to date. And I think when you look over the last 3 to 4 albums, they've definitely been kind of trending this way where everything has been more cohesive in terms of the thematic touches.
Yeah, and the themes run strong through this thing, right? About big modern society, technology, media, how it's all affecting us at this point in our society and all of that. There's a lot of heavy stuff going on here. So, I just wanted to throw a quick anecdote was I decided to just go analog for this and write all my notes on a notepad. And sit and look at the water at the beach pier while I listened to the album for the first time. And it was definitely a nicer way of doing it than I usually do, sitting in front of the blue light. But let's get into this, huh?
Yeah.
So
That irony just hit me like a hammer. So since I did type my notes on a computer, so yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, let's get into it.
well, here, let me flip through this and get the sound of the pages for everyone to hear. Um, well, no, we start with "Begin," a parentheses song, one of many we see on this album. And I guess we can talk about this with Big Modern, but to me, this is just adding more fodder to the fire that the Big Modern sounds like Money for Nothing crowd has been saying since 2 years ago, with the wailing guitar slowly coming in and all of that. But any thoughts on "Begin" before we get into the studio cut of Big Modern?
I mean, outside of being like very on the nose, Dire Straits, Money for Nothing, I also felt like it had a little bit of like a Miami Vice or Lethal Weapon style intro as well. Like those images were popping through my head as we were running through this, and it just kind of became one of those things where I was like, this would sit well in any number of pieces of media from the 80s.
Oh yeah, and Big Modern too. Let's get into this. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on the studio cut? Because we know how much we both love the live cut of this.
Yeah, I don't have many negatives. A lot of the positives are I love the slightly more electronic and aluminum sounding guitar tone. I think that works really well here. They found a way to transform this song while also completely keeping the essence the same, if that makes sense. The overdub vocals, including the lowrider style bassy vocals, are really awesome. I love the slinky synth work from Peter. It gives me some Huey Lewis Power of Love vibes when all the instruments drop in. The playfulness of the breakdown section is also really well appreciated. They kind of use an acoustic guitar there instead of what we're used to in the live setting. But then they also add in vocals following the keys kind of in a very whimsical style before the guitar comes in and we get the face section. Uh, I think the vocal addition in the breakdown is maybe the only thing I don't like. It comes off a little bit too cheeky for me. But really, overall, loving this how they tied everything together, and also some really great leading lines from Trevor on this.
Oh my god, yeah. And I think you said it super well that they stayed very true to the song that we know and love, while adding that flair that only the studio can provide in a lot of ways. But
Yep.
the vocal layering just hits you in the face, like, right from the jump. Like, even during the verses, there's, like, deep,
Yeah.
ominous, almost growling voices happening beneath it all, and, every time you listen, I feel like you pick up on a new layer to this Big Modern, the studio cut, at least, and, um, yeah, during the chorus, you can hear, like, disco style driving rhythm guitar on one listen, and then the next listen, you're in the post chorus and you hear one of those, like, kids sliding whistles going off in the background to add to, like, the cheeky theme of the absurdity of ideas in this song and, like, doom scrolling and how whirly-dirly it kind of all is. And then
Yeah.
you talked about the calm before the metal storm that happens, the face section, and it sounds like acoustic guitar mixed with, like, a banjo effect for, like, that back and forth
Mhm.
almost to me. And yeah, the vocalization over it sounds like really cool circus carnival kind of vibes, and then back to the metal, baby. I just thought they nailed it,
Yeah.
and um, it still blows me away to hear that transition as much as it did when we first got the song in Holmdel almost 2 years ago, and the magic was really captured listening to this.
And maybe even more so because it's not like Rick can just sling an acoustic guitar over his shoulder for that one breakdown section before they come into the face. And so I just thought that, yeah, the carnival like aspect of it, the kind of kitschy nature of the vocal runs mirroring everything, it just, there's a lot more they can do with it in the studio sense. And it really, really all tied it together perfectly for what they were going for.
Yeah, and then we get one flavor of the '80s with Big Modern, and then we move into Savager. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
This is one of the only 2 tracks I don't like on the album, but if you're into the '80s, man, do I have a Goose song for you. Definitely giving me the '80s film soundtrack vibes. You can just picture some teenager running away from some danger or something, or a hero in a training montage sequence, a la like Karate Kid or Rocky. And there's something pretty much as soon as this begins, it's very synth focused. Guitar and bass really only comes in here and there. But I will say Cotter has a super interesting beat on this one and really ends up stealing the spotlight on the song, but also a lot of this album. I think this song is very dependent on the beat entirely. Rick's vocals are outstanding for the vibe they're going for, and I think the guitar solo fits perfectly. Just the vibe that they're going for is not my vibe.
This is why I'm letting you go first because I love all
Yeah,
the '80s cheese, and
I
we're
know.
doing a good times, end times kind of vibe here, back and forth on
Yeah.
some of these songs. But yeah, I totally agree on the '80s sound. It made me think of, like, dumb '80s comedies, like the movie Fletch or something. Even though I don't want to promote that d bag
Mhm.
Chevy Chase too much, but synth pop through and through. And yeah, the one
Yep.
thing you notice for sure is, like, no guitar on this thing. Rick's really only showing up singing until the solo at the end, which is a huge surprise for a Goose tune. It's all synth pop all the way. And then thematically, once again, much like Big Modern, this song also kind of has a heavy theme buried beneath the soundscape of it all. When I kind of read through these lyrics and try to break them down, I'm obviously not the authority on it. It's just how I process it. It kind of reads about being the force or something of doubt and anxiety, like that invisible hand they reference in our modern world, and how it can manipulate our anxieties and fears. And it's depicted in so many different clever angles, kind of reminding me of the rabbit holes that these internet algorithms can take people down and exploit your desperation and twisting what people say and embellishing your paranoid delusions and feeding into the imperfections that claw into your mind. Like those lyrics just all really struck me from the jump. And I'm not normally a lyrics guy. Um, and all the while in the chorus of the song, the central figure of this song is left wondering how to break out of the vicious cycle, like many of us are, and reach beyond a life awake. I love that line. So I just found that to be remarkably deep, buried beneath this very, very 80s pop tune, and not always what we get out of Goose. Sometimes we get the silly songs, and then sometimes we get the silly sounding songs that are remarkably deep like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's really deep, man. I haven't been able to pour into the lyrics as much as you have, clearly, but love the insights you're able to pull there. And I think, like, probably I'll notice this when I get more into the album, but it's kind of the opposite approach of like Big Modern or Good to Be, where it just seems like, it's a lot of random concepts all thrown together to kind of give you that heightened anxiety of searches on the internet. Whereas this seems to be a little bit more focused towards an actual like well-rounded thought or take on what the internet brings.
Yeah, and like when we were started trying to break down the lyrics of Big Modern way back when, like I think we may have said it on the podcast, maybe not. Like my head immediately went to like a doom scroll, like you're just like getting like
Yeah.
Chevy truck commercials and then random bullshit on the internet that pops up when you're going reel by reel. And then
Yeah.
Rick came out and said it when they announced the Good to Be or whatever in an interview that everyone's doing their nightly doom scroll, and I was like, "Oh my god, maybe that's what Big Modern
Yeah.
is about." So,
Yeah.
anyway, that theme permeates throughout the album clearly. We're exploring
Sure.
different angles of modern society and tech. Um, but next up is "You Are Here," another parentheses song, the second one on the album. And what'd you think about this one? Part of the Savager suite.
I love it. I don't have lengthy notes on it, but I thought it was a very interesting musical interlude. Serious Benatar vibes on this one for me, with a little bit of Toto thrown in as well. Just those huge echoing and anthemic vocals, dramatic rhythm changes stand out as well. I love the spaces in between the almost crashing into you melodies, where it just has this like huge wall of sound ensemble style arrangement. Really, really cool stuff on a short tune here.
I flipped through my notes here. Um, because I'm still analog here. Uh, this song kind of gave me like "We Are the World" vibes when with the vocals.
Yeah.
That's where my head immediately went, and then it's kind of layered with that retro coded indie pop that this band clearly loves with a lot of their cover choices, like for modern songs that was getting really popular in like the late aughts or early 2010s. And it reminds me in a way of Dawn. Not that it sounds like Dawn, but the sense that it fits so flawlessly with the song that came before it while being a completely different tone and sound. I really enjoyed the vibes of this and then how it led into the Scavenger spell to finish the suite here.
Yeah, it's great stuff. It gave me the "We Belong" Pat Benatar song vibes
Yes,
right almost right away.
that's an even better comparison, honestly. I was like, what's this sound like with all these vocal layers?
This album is very evocative. I want to say that as well because I would say probably almost all of the songs made me think of something else within seconds of starting. So that's definitely a huge quality on this album. Everything kind of reminded me of something else, but done in a completely different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Super well said, as always, my friend. But let's get into Scavenger Spell, or as I wrote down, is this interlude four?
This is great stuff. It flows into it beautifully. I think that this one kind of gives me Labyrinth vibes at the start. Again, want to shout out the drums though. I love Cotter's very jazzy style here. I don't get to hear him do this kind of style very often. He's so often doing the shuffle or beating the drums into submission, but it has a contemplative and peaceful nature to it. It sounds less like an unfinished song as the last track, but more like a series of related musical ideas. I love the back half where it gets a little bit more spacey and experimental sounding. It starts to feel less composed and more improv oriented. Has a lot in common with that TED type style feel that they get into when they try to do a more ambient, ethereal style jam, but beautiful track and one of my favorites on the album.
Oh my god. You talked about Cotter and, obviously Rick is going full Juilliard with this super jazzy arrangement, but Cotter is what caught my ear with just how much like complexity he's playing with while showing such restraint at the same time to accompany Rick's lighter playing, and it just blew me away. Cotter is just a beast and continues to level up and impress me when I think he's already hit his peak in so many ways. Like, how can it get even more peak?
This was very Fishman esque.
Oh
So,
yeah.
I mean, great stuff.
Oh yes. And led once again, album feels very cohesive, like we said from the jump. Led really nicely into Good to Be, which we've had for a few months now. And it took a few listens for me, at least, for it to click. We haven't really talked about the studio cut since it dropped initially. And it's obviously become a monster in the live setting, getting like multiple 20 plus minute versions. But how are you feeling about the studio cut now?
Well, I started off not liking it. I would say at this point, I'm pretty agnostic on it. It's not my type of song. As so many have said, it kind of reminds you of Michael Jackson. It makes me think of Conga by Gloria Stefan and Sound Machine. So even though it doesn't have a ton in common with that progression, I don't hate it at all. I think Rick's vocals are great and larger than life. I find the verses really catchy. Not the biggest fan of the chorus, but I think that what has transformed my opinion of this song the most is now we've had several standout live performances of it. And I think whatever your thoughts are of the studio version, this song very, very much works in the live setting. And so um, it's not my type of song, but they did a really good job with what I think they were going for here, and it rocks in concert.
Yeah, and we thought it could be a really good jam vehicle, like most people did from the jump, just because the progression is just such a nice, catchy progression and easy for someone to latch onto. You hear it in like the guitar sounding solo on the outro, and they just expand on that so greatly in the live setting. But yeah, this one really, really has grown on me. I think the Michael Jackson kind of sound is a very apt comparison, but once again, hitting on a completely different flavor of all the 80s stuff we've heard so far while keeping it in that vein of music that you love so much, buddy.
They're making more of a believer out of me than I thought anyone could, so props to the Goose.
That's what they do, man. Just look at you with the rise.
Yeah. Learning life lessons left and right thanks to Goose.
And then next up, another familiar tune. This 1, 2, 3 was just familiar tunes from the jump, and Media's up next. How are we feeling about the studio cut of Media after hearing so many live versions once again for almost 2 years here?
Definitely one of my favorite tracks on the album. I think it keeps the spirit of what we've heard in the live setting while adding lots of bits and pieces of actual media in a way that reads quite literally like the message of the song, just being totally overwhelmed by media. They actually insert the most overwhelming amount of snippets of media into this song in so many different types of formats. And it's a very meta bit that works super well for me and adds to the unhinged nature of the track with Cotter's vocals and everything. And I just love everything about it. It's a perfect example of form and function when it comes to the music and lyrics fusing here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the Talking Heads sounding song sounds even more David Byrne now. And when I first
Yeah.
heard this track, ironically, it kind of comes up later in the album, but I was right scribbling down my notes live, and I hadn't heard the later songs yet when I heard this, and it elicited the feeling with all the different soundscapes going on of like the first time I ever walked into a casino, and all the lights and sounds are just like overwhelming, and you don't know where to put your eyes because it's just like all so incredible. And then they managed to make Cotter's vocals super trippy on the studio cut while keeping that driving rhythm feel that we all love about it. And the other thing, really, besides what you said that I noticed is we didn't get the kind of carnival style ending here, which people love or hate. That 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 that. Instead, it slowly fades into Torero, but shout out to Juz on Blue Sky who hates that ending, so I hope he was happy about the change because he always bitches about that ending.
It seems pretty insignificant to me, but I mean, this album was very good about making sure that the last song flowed into the next one in most cases, so that just continues here.
Well, we're gonna keep the good times, end times going. Let the end times go before the good times because I'll let you pop off on Torero before I gush on it.
I don't have much to say. If people really want to hear what I think about the new Torero, like go back through any of our most recent episodes. There's those takes are in there. I just put they ruined this for me.
Yeah, but
Period.
what was ruined for you, Mike? Come on, let the people know. We are gonna get more listeners on this episode.
So the biggest point of contention for me is, I mean, besides the absolute 80sification of this, is I really feel like taking away the guitar and the oomph that we had when we were transitioning from verse to chorus, the way this was originally set up, is a big nothing burger for me. I feel like every time we get to the chorus, the air gets let out of the song, literally and figuratively, and it's all just because I'm waiting for the guitar to hit and the chorus to smack, and instead it just goes to nothing and some synth, and it doesn't work for me. There's a lot of people it does work for, and that's great. And I still think that Torero in the live setting is going to absolutely slap. I don't think that's ever going to stop, but the formatting of this song I think was better the way it used to be. I think they could have even made this more 80s like without robbing the punch that the chorus previously had. That's my take.
And I think that's fair. I think I'm glad that I reserved too hard a judgment on it initially because in my head, I kind of went into it like if the original didn't exist and I just heard this, would I hate it? And I kind of compartmentalized the old song, hoping that Faina at the time when they dropped it was the part of the old song that I loved the most of dueling guitars. And I do think this would have been like way better received if the original Torero never happened or it was just named something different. But we had talked on our songs that Goose should cover episode with Jeremiah. Shout out to Jeremiah that Phil Collins was such a good fit for this band, and this is the Phil Collins song, man. It sounds like a Phil
Yep.
Collins original with the sweeping sound that builds and builds, and get that final chorus where everyone in unison is taking those shots. It's almost like a giant shot to the chest of bass and like a giant gust of force leading to an emotional Rick solo. Shout out to all these bushes behind me if you're watching on YouTube blowing around like crazy. But yeah, it leads so nicely into Faina. I think it was a mistake for them to drop this without Faina because it's just like it's an abrupt ending when they released it solo. But it leads so well into Faina, and it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I have good things to say about Faina, so I will. They used to be just part of the song, but now that it's separated, I do have good things to say about Faina.
Yeah, so let's hear it, Mike. What do you think about this? Obviously, a lot of people's favorite part of the original arrangement is kind of
Yeah,
rearranged a little bit here, but keeps the spirit.
yeah, and I guess like that part, I should not let that get lost in translation. Like easily, Faina is the best part of it. It's where the jam was before. So I mean, this is the part that I was most concerned would go away, and it hasn't. So whatever my quibbles are with the song, they're probably minor when it comes to seeing this played out in a live setting. But this part's still very good. In fact, it may be even better than it was before because I love the creepy, dark, and discordant nature of the beginning before going into the Latin flavored dueling guitars we're familiar with. I love the echoes and general spaciness that, for whatever reason, when I was listening to this, it kept bringing my mind to the thought that it sounded like this was recorded outdoors or something like that. That's just like the visual I had in my head. And so, amplifying it and making it more spacey all at the same time was just I don't know how they did it, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, not shockingly, I love this too. I mean, we talked about it when we did Gonzo with Griff and how cool it sounded and different, but it does stick very true to that live sound we heard already before this dropped. Um, I love the build of the like early part, the dark part you're talking about, where it's kind of like Rick's playing this Latin coded yet jazzy, almost inspired by his buddy Julian Lodge, who we saw last night as we're recording with the band. And then it fully goes into everyone's favorite part of the original arrangement, with Rick independently playing that riff, and then the full band locks in, accompanies him, and it's a nice build to getting to the last run through where Peter hops on his guitar and then is doing the true dueling guitars. I love the way this builds. As much as I love the extended section with them doing the dueling guitar section, the build, like you said, almost translates like way better in terms of being a more like cohesive sound overall.
Yeah, it sounds less like a gimmick and more like a fully fleshed out piece of music now. It's composed truly, and that's great.
Yeah, and we saw that they jam out that darker section on the latest version of Torero Live, which is going to be really interesting to see if they're going to continue to use that as the jam vehicle or going to do it out of the Latin dueling guitar part or whatever. It's going to be really interesting to see. So, um, I love the way that this sounds. I'm so glad that they kept it. That was my biggest worry as well, even though I did dig the original or the new arrangement to the original. um, I hope they play both, candidly speaking, live. But anyway, we're talking studio cuts. We're not going to get into that too much. Fana is great.
I will say just one more thing about the live possibilities. I will say I think that Fana could be really interesting because they could just jam out the dark discordant stuff and skip the dueling guitars or bring the dueling guitars back later in a set list. There's just a lot of endless possibilities there, and I hope they fully explore that.
Yeah, and they could even work it like Dawn has been, where they just independently play it on its own out of something, which would be really interesting.
Yes.
You're getting into a weird,
Yeah.
trippy, dark jam, and then you're like, "Fuck it, let's Fana this thing." Like, it'd be so sick.
Yeah, it could also come out of the Tumble Jam because it's got some things in common with that. Like I could easily see Rick bridging the two. So yeah, lots of fun possibilities with Fana.
All right, let me turn my page here. Um, Pop's up
Mr.
next.
Analog.
I know it was a
Yep.
dumb idea because now I kind of like regret it. I mean, it's less convenient. I'm glad I hand wrote this all, but much less convenient for the
Yeah.
pod.
It's a good
Um,
exercise.
Pop, the Peter tune, the lone Peter tune on this album. How'd you feel about this one?
It's okay. I think it's my second least favorite behind God, I already forgot it. Savinger. But I don't love the verses. I do like the chorus a lot. The verses are very aha, Duran Duran with a little B 52s, generally in that same world. But I do love the pop rock chorus. It works really okay for me. The vocal harmonies are absolutely stellar throughout this. I like that I get some guitar with distortion for a change. That's not a typical thing on this album. The speed bursts from Cotter are really awesome, and the bridge is really great along with the guitar solo. So I think the positives kind of average out to where it's a decent track for me, but not my favorite.
It's so funny you said B-52s. I wrote that down thinking I was being like super insightful and you wouldn't have the same thing. And then, of course, the mind meld continues. I'll hit you with another weird connection I made in my head. I kind of teased you about this before, but I didn't tell you exactly what it was. But that droning synth at the beginning that starts and then permeates through the verses sounds so much like the synth I'd expect to hear in Stranger Things when the gang's plotting like how they're gonna attack Vecna next. And then it's like
Yeah.
almost like they're watching MTV in the background with like Devo and the Talking Heads and the B-52s playing in the background. And then the chorus goes
Yeah.
full pop punk, like you said. Tony Hawk Pro Skater vibes is what I wrote down, with an 80s overtone. And then the solo at the end, once again, such a cool effect, almost like half guitar that roars into that tumbling high energy, back to pop punk, explosive vibes. I'm really curious how this one's going to sound live. Ironically, we're recording this just after the Toronto show happened, and they didn't play a single song off the new album. I was hoping we'd have something to talk about, but we'll see what happens with the tour.
I will say to your point, this was probably the one where even though it's like my second least favorite on the album, I would probably go so far as to say this is the one I would most like to see them writing because I don't know how they got these verses and this chorus together. Like what part was written first? How did they evolve into it? Like all of that would be fascinating to me because there's no world where I would have been able to easily link these two different sounds. There you go from like hungry like the wolf sound to you know the earliest pop punk that I started listening to, like I don't know, Newfound Glory or something. Like it's just like,
Yes.
what world are we living in? Like I don't know, it's insane. But I'll be interested as well to see how this goes live.
Oh my god, yeah. It's gonna be really interesting. And then all these songs that we've talked about so far could easily jam. Like we've seen them doing with all
Yeah,
kinds of songs, but these ones like hit your ear immediately like, oh, this could easily jam. Like they all have such catchy progressions that could you could easily just waltz into whatever you want to from. Um, but yeah, there's so much to the layering on this one as well, where like with every listen, and we've only gotten a handful of listens at this point, and I feel like I'm picking up on something new, some new synth sound, some new chirp that I didn't hear the last time I listened. So
Yeah.
it's been a fun ride, even with songs that you might not like as much, like pop.
Well, it's so disorienting. I feel like that's going to be our experience. Some of these are just not what our ears are expecting to hear, and so we're just going to keep getting new nuggets out of them. So that'll be the fun part about listening to this album all summer long until like a month from now, Goose drops another surprise album on Jimmy Fallon or something.
God, I still think about how this is like what 3 albums in 14 or 15 months. Insane,
Yeah,
insane.
yeah,
We're
it really
feasting
is.
here. Um, and you talked about like picking up on something that sounds super different, but Salt. I don't think this one sounds super different. At least not the main part of the song. They stuck very true to this, almost like very Chain Your Dragon style production to me, where they added a little flair in the studio, but really nailed the live sound of this song that we've been hearing for the last 2+ years.
Yeah, this song absolutely still rules. Still a rock song too, which is also thank God. But this is maybe the most harmonies I can ever remember hearing from Goose on an album track. I mean, the harmonies on this are like Beach Boy level insane. Other than that, it keeps all the vibes very similar. Did not overly pour on the 80s touches outside of the harmonies, which are just, I'm going to keep saying it, objectively great. I'm a fan of the bridge, which I know has gotten mixed reactions from people. I think it sounds incredible here. And also, I feel like if they hadn't changed this bridge, I feel like this song would maybe be a little bit out of place on this album, but the bridge is kind of what ties it into the album. So, good call there. And then this salt gets a jam on it and a very great jam. I think that it's starts off with a gentle build and gets some light fills from Rick, and it just gradually builds into this nice blissy progression that they start to build out, and then eventually ends up moving into more like overtly funky bliss. And even though it's shorter than some purely musical pieces they've recorded in the past, this is probably the closest thing for me to a Goose Jam that exists on an album. Factory might be the only other contender, but
Mhm.
this is like, giving you the live Goose experience about as good as it can be. And I love the switch to Bliss here instead of just being a face melter like Salt typically is.
So you made a lot of awesome points, and I want to make sure I try to address all of them because you just like gave a flurry of amazingness there. There's a lot to this song, and I mean, first of all, who would have thought, like, who would have put it on their bingo card that "Salt" would be the longest track on this album when they first dropped the track
Not me.
list? Like, right? I would have been like, oh, it's Big Modern for sure. And then second of
Hmm.
all, like, you can hear how much flair they added, like we said many times already today, that only the studio can provide on this, but it still sounds so much like Salt. Like even the like light arpeggiated synth that pokes through on the verses, or like just the vocal layering, like you said, is just insane. And then the bridge or chorus, some people call it the chorus. I don't think it's the chorus. I think it's the bridge. What do we describe it as structurally? Anyway, I think it's the bridge.
Yeah.
They had just nailed it finally to me in Europe just before this album came out, and that really like made it start to click for me. And then hearing the vision from the studio cut, now I really really like it. It just took me a minute for it to click, and it's a much harder sound to hit live. I feel like than the old one. Like it, you're singing
Yeah.
falsetto. It's a little bit quieter. It's not just like headbanging rock like the end of the song typically is. But it's definitely grown on me as much as I love the old Salt in the Air and all that, and it was so sing along. Like this sounds really, really great. And then the jam. Whew. Yeah, you talked about it. I won't say much more than you did. I love that quieter, more joyful space they get into where Trevor just continues to blow everyone away every time they get into that soundscape. And it sounds a lot like that, like Charlie Brown, slightly jazzy bliss sound that we got a lot last summer, like at the Mountain Jam Echo or the Westville All I Need for a little bit. And then it does shift a little bit. It gets kind of bluesy, it gets a little funky, and then it gets right back into the headbanging and Salt outro, which was just an awesome, awesome ride. It felt like truly like seeing Salt live with a short, compact jam
Yeah.
like it normally gets.
Yeah. It's amazing how they were able to capture what they do in a live setting. And if you haven't, if maybe you're following Goose for a while, but still haven't made it to a show, like this is, for any Goose song, this is as close to their actual jamming style that I feel like they've put on an album so far. Like I said, the factory would be the only other thing, but I think this surpasses even that.
All right. And then You gotta do another parentheses song again. We came from DMB land. Everyone knows this already if you've listened to more than 10 episodes of this show. Hopefully, you've listened to more than 10 episodes of this show. Or if you're new, welcome. We love to talk and yap about dumb shit and cool shit. But we came from DMB land, and the beginning of this sounds so much like Dave Matthews number 34 or like solo playing Fool to Think as he's done in the past. But anyway, it's not about Dave. This is about Rick. And obviously, he's inspired by that music with that staccato rhythmic feel to it, playing on the acoustic and the interesting intervals to it. But this thing fully goes prog rock pretty quickly from that intro, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was a cool interlude. I'm curious if we ever get the opportunity to ask someone about this, like, were these like not fully fleshed out ideas that they were just like, we got to find a way to throw this into the album, or were these added after the fact? I'm very curious about that because this is a really cool concept that definitely fits more as an interlude than just like a full song kind of vibe.
Yeah, and at least so far, the tracks we've broken down, there's already like a bunch of differences. Like "You Are Here" sounds like a partial song to me. "Savager Spell" sounds like, a bunch of different pieces of jams thrown together. Like there's a lot of different there's a lot of variety within the parentheses, and so I'd be interested as well, like how did they come about on all of these? Because it seems like maybe not all of them originated the same way. This one, I agree, it definitely has that like staccato, like almost Dave Matthews feel, but it's so much more eerie and anxiety inducing. And I was trying forever to think of what this reminded me of, and it finally came to me like just a couple hours ago. I think the other thing that this reminds me of is like "Hail to the Thief" by Radiohead. It
Mm.
very much can like give me that same, the guitar parts are not identical or anything like that, and "Hail to the Thief" flows a little bit more smoothly, but it gives me the same feeling and puts me in the same like musical mood, so to speak. And so a lot in common with that as well. But very cool interlude here, and definitely like cues you in that the album is kind of going into a new phase.
Oh yeah, it's just it slides in so well. It's so different from everything we've heard on the album, but
Mhm.
somehow it just slides in so well. And yeah, I can definitely hear the Radiohead you're referencing now that you say it. It was very hard to place it, but that very punchy staccato sounding guitar intro was just very reminiscent of past
Yeah.
memories of going to Dave shows. Anyway, um, next up, Good Times, End Times. We've referenced this song a bunch of times with our differing opinions here. I'm curious about your opinion on this. We haven't talked about this song at all, honestly, before this.
I like it, and there's a lot that's interesting about it. It's a lot going on in this song. The verses sound kind of like Born in the USA to me, just that really simple but heavy-handed synth. Nice, gentle driving rock progression that sounds as much like classic Goose or anything on the album for me anyways. But the chorus is kind of the opposite. It goes sparse and takes a very dramatic turn and sounds almost a little bit conflicted. And what was also interesting to me is the second time they hit the chorus, it just sort of ends. And the first time you're listening to this, you're really not prepared for that abrupt ending. I was kind of in my head, like already prepping myself for a bridge or an outro, and it doesn't do that. So, very interesting song, but very, very catchy.
Oh, it's extremely catchy, and it does elicit like some classic rock Americana almost vibes at times, but it is very aptly named with the dichotomy of themes and sound between the verses and the
Yeah.
chorus. Um, it hits you with those different snapshots of how society right now, it's like the best time to be living and also so dystopian at the same time. This society is so wondrous, and then people feel so terrible at the same time. And in so many ways, we never had things better, but also in so many ways, we've structured our society and the crutches that we live with, technological or otherwise, to like make us all feel miserable in a lot of ways. Um, and they reference it in the lyrics. That's why I'm bringing it up. It's like they talk about like consumerism, the inherent performative fakeness we all do online thanks to social media and influencer culture, how lonely so many people feel despite being more connected than ever. And, I just found that to be really, really cool with the way they had named it. I was so curious when I saw that. I was like, what the fuck could this possibly be with this name? Um, and then there's the binary code at the end that sounds so much like AEIOU. Like, obviously the inspirations throughout the album were coming through all over the place, and Jim James is yet another. And I'm no expert on the binary stuff. I have no idea what it means, but I thought with the theme of the song and the name being Good Times, End Times, and hearing the stop at the end, it made me think like almost like this song is a transmission after the end times or like a telegraph or something that's like sending the end times message. But anyway, musically, love this kind of classic rock feel to it with that indie spin that few bands can do like Goose.
You're going to have me and probably a bunch of listeners spending a lot more time in the lyrics after this episode. So I appreciate that about you, bud. Because, yeah, this has got me very curious to listen to this about 10 more times now that you've put that all out there for me, because it does fit perfectly with the sounds musically and the dichotomy between the verses and the chorus. So, yeah, awesome work there.
Dude, it's a new me. I'm Studio Alex. Remember like a year and a half ago when I said Goose didn't need to put out studio albums and then they released 3 since then?
Yeah. Yeah. And each one you've become more a fan of. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
remember.
I mean, listen, I'm so glad I need a Mulligans episode on all my hot takes apparently. But yeah, I dove into the lyrics. I'm not usually a lyrics guy, and this album really, really kind of hit me in the feels in a lot of ways, and like reflect on how I felt about a lot of this stuff. And I post about it a lot to get a lot of vitriol about it on my personal page. But anyway, it's not about that. Next up, Nocturne. Oh my god. I'll let you dive into it first. I mean, this is my highlight of the entire album, obviously.
No, you go first. If it's your highlight, man, you got to go first.
Well, we ride into the Nocturne portion of this, continuing from the binary from Good Times to End Times, and then go into yet another Moon Cabin style interlude feel with gorgeous yet haunting strings that simmers down into near silence, and then bam, like huge rocking power chord section that once again feels super like heavy prog rock or prog metal coated. That serves like a nice bookend to the metal we got at the beginning of the album with Big Modern. And then after this headbanging for a little bit, the song moves into another jazzy, almost Schofield inspired solo from Rick that once again has Trevor and Cotter absolutely blowing my mind on the rhythm section, just accompanying Rick perfectly. And then Peter's also just laying down these gorgeous keys that just add to the haunting vibes of Nocturne overall. And then I wonder how many, like, as I was listening to it, I wondered live in the moment, like, how many takes did this take? Because it just sounds like an organic jam in a lot of ways. Because once they kind of like build to this peak, it feels very natural, and then it goes into this full scripted sounding. They wrote a theme song for a '90s cartoon. I'm back in my PJs watching TMNT or X-Men on a Saturday with this crazy synth outro. Did you feel the '90s vibes, Mike?
Yeah, definitely the end section felt like any of the early 90s cartoons I grew up on as well. The Tick, X-Men, Amazing Spider-Man, Batman the animated series. Take your pick. Saturdays were pretty jam-packed when I was growing up in the early 90s. So there were a lot of cartoons that went for that vibe that they did in the last section of this.
Damn it, Goose! Why weren't you born 40 years earlier to write the X-Men theme song? But yeah, it's a really really cool sound, cool vibes, very retro. And then Peter is doing this bright synth thing, Rick's doing the digital sauce, and it sounds very exploratory in that section. And it's just such a catchy earworm in unison, and it takes us on the last leg of the journey to that explosion of metal once again to close us out on one of the best treats that Goose has ever released in studio, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is definitely like top 2 or 3 tracks on the album for me. I think I really like the beginning part. It's very moody and once again sounds very Radiohead to me in the beginning. A lot of dramatic touches on this album, and this song feels very weighty even in that context. When the heavy guitar and the heavy beat drops in for the first time following the initial progression, it gives it like this extra gravitas. But when they bring it back down and go into that jazzy section that you mentioned with like really awesome runs from Rick and the noodliest of noodling from Trevor. And Cotter is just constantly switching up the backbeat. It reminds me in so many ways of some of Trey's like extremely complex composed pieces of music. Like this thing is truly multi-sectional in like a you enjoy myself type of way. Just it's got its own Goose from the 80s style on it, but very much in the same vein. And it's a work of art. Hang it in the fucking Louvre, as they say.
It's a work of art, much like X-Men was in the '90s. Once again, damn it, Goose! Why didn't you write Nocturne as the X-Men intro for the '90s cartoon?
And I will co-sign that. I have all of those episodes downloaded on this laptop we're recording on, so
Disney,
huge fan.
if you're somehow listening to this podcast, X-Men 97 is a new show that's been coming out, and you have the opportunity to use Nocturne as your intro. Just throwing it out there.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, that was just quite a ride. And then we get into like a triple parentheses post place here to close out the album. I thought this was absolutely gorgeous. How'd you feel about post place?
I loved it. I don't have like a ton of technical notes on it. It's so gentle and pretty, very much all about the heavenly overdubbed vocals from Rick. I don't know that they've ever or I've ever heard so many different Ricks singing on the same song, but it works amazingly. Trevor has a really awesome bass line, and the light touches from Peter and Cotter. It's just a great close to the album, but it really truly does sound like heavenly light is shining down on you when you're listening to this.
Yeah. It feels like a reprieve from all like the downer themes of the album in a lot of ways. It reminds me a ton of Bon Iver or like some of the slower sections of Radiohead ballads that we love so much. And thematically, it does feel like a burst of hope or acceptance that there's a path out of like all of this terribleness of modern society and media if we don't let ourselves get burdened by it. Just looking at the lyrics, but again, that's just my interpretation. I'm not a lyrics guy, so if I sound really dumb, hit us up and let me know.
No, you've been killing it on the lyrics, man.
All right. Well, that's Big Modern, man. So I want to wrap this episode up by just running through some like overall thoughts on the album and doing like our normal like rank some of the songs and all of that. But um overall, how are you feeling about the album? What would you like rate it out of 10 if you want to do that, or just overall thoughts in general?
Well, first of all, I'll reiterate I'm not the target audience for this album. The 80s are my least favorite decade of media, and I feel like that's one of the larger brushes that they painted with in terms of the tone and textures that they went for here. It's as good as this style of album could be for someone like me, and that's just because of how talented Goose and D. James Goodwin are. I do have to admit there are way more highlights on here than I expected there would be for me. Overall, I think it's going to take the most adjusting that I've ever needed for a Goose album, and even then, I'm not sure how far it would move up my list of favorite Goose albums. But that being said, they're still my favorite band. That led alone to way more than that I enjoyed than I would have guessed. And there's even a few songs and elements that I'm eager to hear in a live setting, and I hope that came across in this episode. So I'll forever be grateful and appreciate that they are always in the pursuit of new musical territory. I would prefer that over any other type of attitude or approach from a band, and so I'm always going to be in full support of that general ethos. But I think like if I were to try and score it, like I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, which for somebody that hates the 80s, like I don't know how you could do much better. Like, I mean, that's pretty much converting me on the spot to being a decent fan of the 80s. So, I mean, job well done, Goose, as I always say.
Shout out to Mike being the only human in history to hate the 80s media. No. Love you, buddy. Um,
Yeah.
7 out of 10 is more than I thought. Like, when you got the first few singles, I thought you were gonna give this a 2 out of 10, so I'm very impressed.
Yeah, me too.
Uh, I love it. I think I still have Chain Your Dragon just one notch ahead because those are so many of, like, their iconic songs that I love, and I think that the
Yeah.
overall palette of songs is stronger there, but this is definitely a more cohesive album, and in my opinion, their most cohesive overall to date. The themes run strong, it flows flawlessly in so many ways, and, maybe the '80s sound isn't for everyone, like you said, but I dig it, and I referenced it earlier. We talked so much on our covers that Goose should do section about like 80 songs even then, because even though they pick a lot of 80 songs, they don't always sound super 80s. And I'm curious how these songs will translate live that we haven't heard yet. If they're gonna still sound super 80s or they're gonna add the Goose flair that they do in the live setting and make them very unique. But I love it. I think it's my number 2 studio album that they've done for my ear, and, I'd have Chain Your Dragon just above it, but that's not a knock on this by any means. I think I'll give it a solid, like, 8.5, 9. Again, as a former studio hater, I'm Studio Alex now. I'm very, very shocked that I love these albums so much.
Yeah, and you made me think of something else. I just want to give this one last thought, but I think that the reason Chain Your Dragon would be number 1 for me is because it's the album that sounds the most like Goose. It's literally taking what they do and putting it on an album and just kind of ironing out any rough edges or wrinkles. And I think that what they've done here and with Everything Must Go in particular is pursue a specific type of vision. And I think that when they approach albums like this, that's kind of what is cool about the studio for them, is that they can do something unique and dynamic and accomplish a completely different stylistic vision than what they do every night on a live stage. And so whenever you do that, I think stylistically, some albums are just going to be higher or lower based on people's personal preference. And I think that's kind of where we're at. Because for me, I like a lot more of the chances that they took on Everything Must Go, but it's just because those tones and those stylistic choices just work a little bit better for me aesthetically. But it's not like a knock on the quality of the albums here at all. So just want to make that like clear if I haven't already. Like, this is just stylistically not up my alley, but really, really well done in terms of the core content and the accomplishment.
Well, no, if we're listening to the themes of this album, I need to like get through the computer and knock you out for disagreeing with me. That's modern society.
Yeah. Well, and I also should have put my notes on paper. That's on me.
Oh my god, stop. That was just that was a me decision. I was like, "Oh, this hits too hard." I average way too much screen time. Um so let's get back into the good times, end times theme that we kind of stumbled
Yeah.
into with this episode. I wrote down what's your biggest surprise and your biggest letdown or disappointment from the songs we already knew.
Okay, so I mean, I guess biggest surprise would be how much Big Modern changed, but is also still incredible and as awesome as I always knew it would be.
Hmm.
Um, I guess if we're counting like before this album came out, I'm still floored and shocked with all the changes they made to Torero. That's still crazy to me. But I think like just truly off of the album, Big Modern would be like my biggest surprise. Maybe honorable mention to Media though. I didn't expect the actual usage of Media on that song, nor would I have been able to fathom how much better it made the song and the message.
Yeah, I think media is actually going to be that's a good segue because that's my biggest surprise. Like I didn't think it was going to change super significantly from what we'd seen live because it just seems so fleshed out at this point. And the way they
Yeah.
added such cool flair to it, and again made my head kind of whirl in a way I wasn't expecting with the song I was familiar with was really really cool. And then biggest disappointment, I'm gonna kind of cheat here because I love the studio cut. I love Big Modern, but my biggest disappointment was getting to the part before the metal and it going into that acoustic guitar, which I still love. But like I love the back and forth that Peter and Rick do live with the guitar and the keys. That's like my favorite part of Big Modern in a lot of ways, like that back and forth. Um, but it's still very cool. I was just like, man, I can't wait to hear how that sounds in the studio, and then it just never happened. So I guess that's kind of a disappointment, but it still sounds amazing the way they did it. So no knock on it by any means.
Well, hey, and I'm at least partially in agreement with you because that section, the Willy Wonka style vocal lines, are not my favorite thing either. So,
Oompa Loompas, yeah, that's a good call.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god,
it's not my favorite part, but it's still a really, really good song, and I love that, Big Modern was not ruined. I know that song is very near and dear to both of us.
we're gonna have to clip the Oompa Loompas marching in from the original movie to
Yeah.
that section.
Amazing.
All right. And normally we rank the whole album. There's so many transition songs in this. I figured we could just do top 5 songs. You don't have to do anything scientific by any means. I still have not written down my 5th song. I'm going to do that on the fly, so I'm curious what you have ranked.
I ranked up to 7 because I felt
Ooh,
very good about what my top
okay.
7 was, so I'll just go in order here. Salt is my number 1. Like I said, I think it's the closest to a Goose Jam you can get on an album. It's absolutely a masterpiece. So thrilled with how that came out. Nocturne's number 2. I know we're both super high on that. Media's number 3. I think that's absolutely perfect. I had Big Modern at 4. Still very good. Post Place I had 5. Good Times I had 6. And Scavenger Spell I had 7.
Okay. All right. So we're not going to agree on everything here, which I love. Although the beginning is very similar. Number
Yeah,
1 Nocturne for me. I was just blown away,
sure.
floored by that. In fact, it made me get to the point where I was like, "Oh my god, I got to send this to my friends over at the Deer Hunter, the band I referenced that no one knows about. They would love this shit." I still need to send it to them. It sounds so much like what they like to do. And then
Yes.
second is Salt. I love the way they adapted this. Although it does feel kind of like cheating because it sounds so much like the live cut in a lot of ways. I love the jam they did on this. It sounds so cool and it sounds so much like an authentic live cut. Number
Yeah.
three, I put down Big Modern. Love it. Number four, I put down Media. I was blown away by this once again. And then number five, I have Scavenger. This song really grew on me. It did not hit my first listen, but then I became a sucker to the hook and the 80s pop. Loved it. The whole suite is amazing. I'm going to cheat and just include all of it because it's all going to be played together live, obviously, in my head at least. And then since he ranked seven, I'll go Good Times, End Times at six, and Post Place at seven.
There we go. A
That's
little
not
bit of variety
scientific.
in our answers.
I
Yeah.
literally just picked those off the fly, so sorry if I offended anyone.
Well, hey, as much as I don't like Scavenger, I love Scavenger Spell, and I really hope that a lot of these parentheses songs do get the live treatment because they're so well composed. They're truly deserving of it in the same way that we still see interludes to this day.
Yeah, and you know, now that I think about it, neither one of us included Good to Be or well, Terrero, you were never going to rank, but
No, I was
oftentimes when
not.
we oftentimes when we rank these, like we tend to like be lower on the songs we've known for a while. So I'm curious where it's going to land after like a year of this album being out. But um, both great tunes for me, and one's great for you. So just interesting.
I love Good to Be in the live setting, and I mean the version from St. Augustine I think is still like 3 or 4 on my playlist jams, so like I mean, could not be more high on that in a live setting.
Oh my God, Pop! I forgot Pop. I'm going to slot that above Post Play. Sorry. See,
Oh
this is
wow.
why I don't do things on the fly. I like Pop. I love
Yeah,
Peter songs.
I do too normally.
Sorry, Peter. I do
Love you,
love Pop.
Peter.
But any last thoughts on Big Modern here?
No, man, excited to see which ones we get at MSG this coming weekend. It's going to be interesting to see. We've still got 2 shows on deck, but going to get at least a few of these in the live setting, I have to imagine, and it'll be very fascinating to see how they get fleshed out on that massive stage.
Yeah, I was so shocked, like I said earlier, that they didn't play a single song off this album at the opening show of this Big Modern tour. With all the like the decor around the album and stuff too in Toronto, it was just wild. So they're definitely saving some of it at least for MSG, if not all the new songs. I'm curious where that lands. Um, but yeah, really strong album. Hopefully leading to a really strong tour. I'm very optimistic about the tour in general, given where the band's been all year, and very excited to get into the first run of shows. I think our next episode will be recapping Toronto through MSG once we both get back from New York, and then we'll continue the coverage throughout the year. We got a lot to cover this summer.
Yeah, we're going to have a gigantic 5-show recap here coming up. Flying in the same day the Knicks are having a parade on Thursday, but could not be more stoked for it.
Oh yeah, let's go Knicks. Our good luck chant of saying "F the Spurs"
Yeah.
definitely worked and made the Knicks win the series, right?
Yeah, it totally did. And yeah, now we get to reap the fruits of our labors.
Yeah, and it's gonna be so exciting to be in New York with that energy. Hopefully, it
Yeah.
kind of rides out. I know it will. It's been 53 years for goodness sake.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome at MSG. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, got a lot of shows to cover, and then we're gonna have a little break where we're gonna be doing some other kind of filler episodes. Filler's not the right word, but not covering shows. We'll be doing deep dives into songs. We'll be doing all kinds of different tangential episodes, I should say. So if you
Sure.
have any ideas on the shows or this album or episode ideas that you want us to do for you, email us at slowreadypod@gmail.com. But otherwise, hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you're enjoying Big Modern, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Goose, open with "We Are the Champions."
See y'all.